Group here in Sligo. We're life pension investment and brokers there, and we've set up since 1958. I'd also like to introduce my colleague there, Tony Quigley, who's our pensions and investment manager. Tony has a wealth of knowledge there, having worked for Standard Life for 30 plus years, and he's highly qualified in the whole pension business there. And we feel that we'd like to give just an overview to everybody here, just to prepare people for this whole area of auto enrollment there. Auto enrollment is something that's been spoken about for many years, probably 25 years at this stage. But incredibly, it's now happening. So 2025 is going to be a starting point for auto enrollment, and 2025 is a key year. We don't know where exactly in 2025 is going to start, but it's absolutely going to start. So the table of contents of our, if you like, of our talk or our questions and answers over and back to myself and Tony this morning is, I suppose, essentially covering what is auto enrollment, how does auto enrollment work, what are the employer watch outs there, what does the employer need to be kind of, really kind of focused in on there. And again, what's the employer's concerns there? What did it need to be kind of concerning themselves with here in this whole kind of, it's a whole new phase for employers. It's a whole new space. And I suppose we need to get our heads around it, folks. And indeed, brokers need to get their heads around it. I suppose the what, the when, and the who. So under auto enrollment, essentially what is it? It's a new pension savings scheme for certain employees who are already not paying into a pension. It will be automatically included in the scheme, but they can opt out after 6 months. When is that? It's going to start in 2025. We don't know when, folks, in 2025, but it is 2025. And the who is that under the scheme, the employer, the employee, and the government, they will pay a certain amount into the employee's pension fund. I suppose, Tony, if I may hand over to yourself there, maybe to handle this slide first, please.
Yeah, thanks, Pádraig. Yeah, so I suppose the first thing to state is that the auto enrollment system is going to be a totally automated system. So the legislation has set up for a National Pension Saving Authority to be responsible for looking after the whole system. And essentially what will happen is that the auto enrollment system will plug into the employer's payroll system. It will search to see if any pension contributions are being deducted from payroll. And if no contributions are being deducted from payroll for a particular employee, then they will automatically fall into the auto enrollment sphere. There are some limits, however, in auto enrollment for automatic enrollment, and the first is the age limit. So it'll apply to all employees between the ages of 23 and 60, as I say, who don't currently have a pension contribution going through payroll, and who earn 20,000 euro more, up to a maximum of 80,000 euro for contribution purposes.
Okay.
The level of contribution is going to be a phased in situation. So from year 1 to 3 of the auto enrollment scheme, you'll have an employee contribution of 1.5% of gross salary, an employer contribution of 1.5% of the employee's gross salary, and then the government will pay 1/3 of what the employee is actually contributing. So giving you an effective tax rate of 25% tax relief for employee contributions. From years 4 to 6, that contribution rate increases to 3% for employer and employee, with again the government contribution also increasing to 1/3 of that increased employee contribution, and then moving up to 4.5% from year 7, and finally from year 10 onwards, 6% employee, 6% employer, and again that third contribution of the employee contributions paid by the government.
Okay, so it can become quite substantial in after years, Tony.
Absolutely. So I think from a budgeting point of view, certainly employers need to be looking at the longer term and making provision within their business for that increasing cost that they're going to have over the next number of years. Okay.
I suppose just maybe to stick with the auto enrollment there for a moment, just can the employee, can they pay more than 1.5% into the auto enrollment plan?
Yeah, great question, Pádraig. Unfortunately not. So the auto enrollment makes no provision for additional voluntary contributions being made on the part of the employee. So the maximum contribution employees can make into auto enrollment will be those 1.5% to 6% over the various years. However, they can make a private arrangement to do additional voluntary contributions under a PRSA. So obviously they can come to ourselves or their own financial advisor with a view to setting up personal contributions over and above the 1.5% that's being deducted from payroll.
Okay. Excellent, Tony. Thank you. And in the situation there where you have an employer, and quite a lot of employers have the trust plans already in place, like if you like, they already have a company paid pension scheme there. In that scenario there, where we've got ABC Limited already have a pension plan, what happens? What happens to the employer in that situation if they're already contributing to a pension for employees?
Yeah, and I think this is one of the key considerations that employers are going to have in looking at the automatic enrollment system, and that is that I have a pension scheme in place. At the moment, I've one pension arrangement. Potentially, when automatic enrollment comes in, I've got two potential pension systems running. I've got my pension scheme that are there for some employees, and I've automatic enrollment for people that aren't members of the pension scheme. I think one of the considerations that employers need to think about is, do I want to run two systems, or do I want to run just one system going forward? If they're looking to run just one system under an existing pension scheme arrangement, then obviously there's a number of considerations there where they may have to change terms of employment. So pension contribution or pension membership to the pension scheme becomes a part of the contract of employment.
Yes.
And it would have to employ to all employees. So part-time employees, people that are in for 6 months, all of those employees would have to be given membership to the pension scheme if they want to avoid a situation of having two pension scheme or pension operations on the go at the same time.
Okay, so do it have to, I suppose, make it more flexible than their existing arrangement then to essentially grab any, to make it to make membership of same available to all employees, essentially.
Absolutely. And the thing within existing pension arrangements, it is possible for different categories of employees to be set up under the same pension arrangement. So not the same funding rate needs to go in for every employee. Different categories of employees can have different funding rates being determined by the employer.
Depending whether they're how senior or how junior they are in the particular firm, etc. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Excellent. And the other thing too is that they have more options there within the actual existing company paid arrangement there. If they wanted to pay more monies into it themselves, they have flexibility there where they don't have that under auto enrollment.
That's right. So under the existing pension scheme, obviously the employer determines initially the rules of the scheme as to what level of contribution the employer and employee wish to make. Interestingly, under the existing arrangement, that is set so it doesn't have to increase in line with increases in automatic enrollment. However, there will be a review of all pension schemes at year 7 to make sure that funding limits within private pension schemes correspond with the contribution levels that would be under auto enrollment at that stage.
I appreciate that. But I suppose there's a strong argument too, in addition to the flexibility, and I know we'll cover off the whole advice piece and when they can retire piece, we'll cover that off in future slides there. But I suppose it's also a way of maybe controlling one's costs, controlling those controllables there for the employer there for maybe at least the first 7 years anyway, subject to that review then to see how the auto enrollment piece is going, I suppose, generally, you know.
But, most definitely. That under the automatic enrollment system, those pension contribution levels are going to automatically increase as the years go by. Within the private pension scheme, which is awaiting the auto enrollment system, the auto enrollment system is just going to look to see, is a contribution going through payroll? It's not going to look to see what level of contribution is going through. It's not interested in that. So an employer could set up a pension scheme where it's saying we'll pay 2.5% employee contribution, 2.5% employer contribution, and that can stay constant over the next 7 years before there's going to be any review that ties it back to the automatic enrollment funding rates.
Okay, yeah, huge point, Tony. Thank you. One of the questions also, Tony, just come to mind would be that if an employee was to join a firm, any firm, and this is going back to the point there that I know you're going to very much hammer home, that after 2025, so if someone was to join maybe in 3 years' time a particular firm, what type of funding rate happens in that scenario?
Yeah, great question, Warwick, because it's actually an area that a lot of people aren't aware of, and that is that the funding rates that are applying of the 1.5, the 3, the 4.5, that applies to the year of automatic enrollment system. So what it's really saying is from 2025 to 2027, the funding rate is 1.5%. Someone joining in 2028, your funding rate is 3%. So if a new employee joins a company or a business, the funding rate under automatic enrollment is going to be the automatic enrollment rate that year of joining. So potentially, if someone joins in 2035, they're automatically in at a 6% employer, 6% employee automatic enrollment rate. They don't start at 1.5%.
So 2025 is the starting point, yeah. Okay, so we need to be aware that it's not the service within the company; it's actually the service after 2025.
Absolutely.
That's the rate that applies. Okay, thank you, Tony. So I suppose just taking on to the, to the next slide there, which I think we've pretty much covered off there, but I suppose it just gives the startling figure there that, I mean, the whole thing goes to 6% employer contribution, and it hammers that home. And I suppose then I think it's fair to say, Tony, in year 10, that there could be further reviews at that stage. So, I mean, not to be very negative this morning, but that 6% could be higher at that point in time, or could be reviewed to be higher.
Absolutely. Like if you look at automatic enrollment in other countries, their funding rates are above the 6% maximum that's there in the Irish arrangement. So don't be surprised if over the years we see that level increasing. I suppose in looking at the system of how the automatic enrollment works, as I say, all contributions are going to be deducted from payroll automatically for people that fall within the categories of it. And then the government will add their contribution to it. That will then go into a centralized pot, and the scheme allows for that there will be 4 fund managers who will equally manage the employee contribution and government contribution going in.
Yes.
The employees really don't have great choice in relation to how they invest their funds, in the sense that all they will have is a choice of what level of risk they want their funds invested at. Do they want to invest at low risk, medium risk, or high risk level? Once they pick that level of risk, all 4 fund managers must apply the same level of risk across that employee's funds. So you can't have a situation where an employee would say, for fund manager A and B, I'd like it at a medium risk, and I'm young, so I'd like a little bit more risk with the other 2. Once they set their risk limits, it will apply across all fund managers at that same level of risk.
Okay, so
and then
so all 4 managers have to adopt the same strategy across the board.
Absolutely. And then what happens is at pension age, and pension age under the auto enrollment system isn't like a private arrangement. So under a private arrangement, as you know, employees potentially have the ability to access benefits anytime from age 50 onwards. The automatic enrollment system will be applying from the date of the state contributory pension age. So currently 66. So no option for employees for early retirement benefits other than on the grounds of ill health. And if that state pension age changes, as they tried to change it in the last number of years, so if it goes to 67, 68, then automatic enrollment also goes to 67 or 68.
Okay, which is a huge issue, something to be aware of. And unfortunately, again, we don't be overly negative this morning, but there's a good chance that will be under review. It is already under review, but it actually may be pushed out. Thanks, Tony. So I suppose moving on to the next slide, I suppose the employer watchouts there. I suppose Tony's already covered this, but I mean, just to reiterate, the employers must match the employee contributions, and if they don't, and if there's any form of non-compliance, there's very, very, very high penalties. We don't know the exact level of those penalties, but they're going to be, they're certainly not worth considering. We need to be aware of the fact that the earnings threshold there is between 20,000 and 80,000 maximum for those calculations. So, you know, you're into a substantial amount of money. 6% of 80,000 runs into a lot of money, in addition to the other outlays that an employer has to fund, employer PRSI, and all the other costs that are involved here. So it's something that the employer has to be aware of. In addition to that, I suppose contributions made by the employers, they're fully deductible, thankfully, for corporation tax purposes, which is the case with a company paid pension scheme, and that does reduce their tax liabilities. So there is some form of relief there under the corporation tax rules there. But again, that is also the case for existing pension plans. I suppose lastly then, to be aware of the fact that employers, they must ensure that their payroll system can handle the auto enrollment instructions and that they can manage those contributions. And I suppose I'm mindful of saying that may, cause an extra outlay or cost or, whatever for as an outlay in any case for the employer. And that's something that the employer needs to be aware of there within their own company. Are they ready? Are they prepared? The employer concerns, then I suppose it's who qualifies, and I know we've touched on that. So it's essentially automatically enrolment there for anyone between 20 and 60 if they're earning in excess of 20,000 euros gross, and irrespective of whether they're full-time, part-time, or even whatever the case is, they're absolutely allowed. They're allowed membership, automatically enrolled. Can we control those costs and outlays? And I suppose that's the important thing. So we've touched on the whole area that if someone was to consider maybe looking at the whole master trust, employer, pension type schemes that are already in place or that an employer may already have, and if they don't already have, that they could put in place, this could be an option to offer one's employees as opposed to that auto-enrollment scheme. And we feel there's an awful lot of extra flexibilities there for both the employer and the employee within that regime. Early retirement, more advice, which we'll cover off in a few minutes, and a lot of other options there, a lot more fund options, fund choice, etc., etc. Huge concern then is to achieve the best value. So, I mean, when you're looking at a 6% outlay, we're unclear at the moment as to what exactly will the cost be in addition to that for the employer. It's a little bit unclear, Tony, I think it's fair to say at this stage.
That's right. And the thing is that, as you say, 6% of the contribution, it's an enormous outlay into the future for employers. And I think a lot of employers are looking to see where can I get the best bang for my buck? Where do I get best value for what I'm putting in? And in looking at value, it's looking at what additional services do I get for what I'm paying. On the auto-enrollment system, it is a pure collection system, an automatic investment system. There's no advice whatsoever associated with it. There's no pension planning associated with it. And remember that automatic enrollment applies also to directors of companies who don't have pension schemes in place for themselves. So there's no exit strategies worked into auto enrollment system at all that would be automatically covered in the advice process for a standalone scheme. I think similarly.
Sorry, Tony, I'm cutting across you, but we all know that pensions aren't a one-fits-all situation, and that's the one kind of the whole auto enrollment. It's not the most flexible of contracts, I think is reasonable to say.
Yeah, I think, and to be fair, automatic enrollment it's a really good thing because it means that there's an awful lot of people that don't have any pension provision that are now going to get some. So it is really important that it is successful when it comes on stream. But it's also important to realize there are limitations in the AE system from that whole holistic planning advice point of view that is so important for that director and key employee.
Absolutely huge. And I mean, and obviously that advice piece is not just for the employee, it's also for the employer, because HR issues and things would arise, and someone may be considering giving someone a raise, or just to work around different situations there, or someone that wants to be promoted within a firm. I mean, there's a lot of concerns and a lot of different, I suppose, HR issues that come into it there, and that's where we feel that we're best placed there to offer that advice piece. I suppose to move on then, Tony, thank you, to the last if you like, our last slide here, is that we just need to be absolutely aware that the key considerations here that AE, auto-enrollment, it's happening, folks, and it's happening in 2025. It's mandatory for all employees. Contribution rates increase every 3 years, and we can see it starts at 1.5% and graduates up to that 6% mark. Employers need to consider what type of pension best works for them, and I suppose that's where we feel Outspring can come in and offer that independent, holistic approach and give you all the options, and do a comparison against the AE option and just see what best suits your firm. Because there's never a scenario in my life, in my 36 years in this business, there's no one-fits-all situation. And I suppose, again, just not to forget that there's absolutely no advice piece under auto-enrollment, folks. So look, Tony, thanks very much for your time and thanks for your insights into auto-enrollment. It's a huge space. I think it's reasonable to say we look forward to any queries from anybody, really. We'd be delighted to meet them at any stage. And just to make the point that there's no cost for these meetings there. It's on a nothing venture, nothing gain basis. And it's something we look forward to any future contacts with anyone out there that wants to understand auto-enrollment.
That's great. Thank you, Padraig.
Thank you.